Pakistan says United States aid snub will backfire. The decision to suspend more than one-third of American military aid to Pakistan could end up hurting Washington more than Islamabad as the United States seeks to navigate an end to the Afghan war and defeat al-Qaida. Former Pakistani officials and analysts have warned. Yes, this is the warning. Holding back the $800 million in aid is unlikely to pressure Pakistan to increase cooperation with the U.S. and could strengthen those in the government who argue that Washington is a fickle ally who can't be trusted. They said, if you still need the relationship, which clearly the United States does, then it really doesn't make sense to take action at this time because it leaves the United States with less, not more, influence with the Pakistani military, said Maliha Lodi, a former Pakistani ambassador to the U.S. Cooperation cannot be had by punitive actions. Despite billions and billions of dollars in American aid since the attacks on September 11, 2001, the relationship has long been tense because of Pakistan's reluctance to target Taliban militants on its territory who stage cross-border attacks against NATO troops in Afghanistan. The relationship took a nosedive on May 2nd when U.S. commandos staged a covert raid to take out al-Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden in a Pakistani garrison town not far from Islamabad. The raid humiliated the Pakistani military, which ordered U.S. trainers out of the country and reduced bilateral cooperation. Yes, this is how it gets done. The lack of trainers means that planned U.S. equipment cannot be put into service, which reduces some of the needed aid. Also, approximately $300 million from the trimmed aid was intended to reimburse Pakistan for the cost of deploying troops along the Afghan border. But U.S. officials claim that Pakistan has not lived up to pledges to uproot and disrupt Taliban militants and suspected al-Qaeda factions in the border regions. President Barack Obama's Chief of Staff, William Daley, said last Sunday that the United States was suspending $800 million in aid to the Pakistani military until the two countries can patch up the relationship. In Washington, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton praised Pakistan as a valuable ally in the fight against terrorism, but acknowledged the relationship is not always easy. She said the decision to hold back some aid does not signal a shift in policy, but underscores the fact that our partnership depends on cooperation. Yes, but what happens when you cut people's checks? Another former Pakistani ambassador to the U.S. said he thought the American strategy to pressure Pakistan was destined for failure. I think it is unwise to expect the Pakistanis to buckle under what is a publicly delivered snub, said the former ambassador. It will strengthen those elements in the armed forces that have always had grave misgivings of the relationship with the United States. Former Pakistani President Musharraf said that the suspension was not in the interest of either nation and could hamper anti-terrorism efforts. We are weakening the country and the army, Musharraf said during an address at Rice University's Baker Institute of Public Policy. It will have a negative effect, certainly, on the Pakistan Army, on its capability to fight terrorism. The move also stoked anger among ordinary Pakistanis. Our country threw the whole country into the inferno of the war on terror and made poverty our destiny, but it could not appease the Americans, said a 41-year-old information technology specialist in the southern port of Karachi. Many Pakistanis have never forgiven the United States for slapping sanctions on the country in 1990 because of its work to develop a nuclear weapon. The decision came only a year after Pakistan and the U.S. were successful in a decade-long quest to drive the Soviets out of Afghanistan. The sanctions left many Pakistanis with a sense that the U.S. was only interested in a transactional relationship that it could abandon once its interests were served. The former ambassador said the United States decision, "I think it hurts Washington more than it hurts Islamabad," said Lodi, the former ambassador. "Assistance is influence, and when you withhold it or suspend it, you deprive yourself of influence." Pakistan Army Chief General Kayani seemed to preempt the effect of the aid cut in a speech after the bin Laden raid, saying all U.S. military assistance now should be diverted to improve the country's economy and help common Pakistanis. "They want to end any impression that there's some kind of hired help," said Lodi. Some analysts have predicted that the suspension of military aid could hurt the military's war against the Pakistani Taliban over the long run, especially since the country is suffering an economic slump. It is unclear what other actions Pakistan will take in response to the suspension of U.S. military aid. It could be less helpful in targeting al-Qaida fighters within the country and in pushing Afghan Taliban militants with whom it has historical ties to negotiate an end to the Afghan war. Yes, this is how Revelation chapter 18 comes to pass or happens. Pakistan is also believed to secretly support United States drone strikes against militants in the country's mountainous tribal region. That support has been seriously shaken in the wake of the bin Laden raid and could be further imperiled by the suspension of aid. The U.S. has said it has no intention of stopping the covert CIA program despite rising tensions with Pakistan. One of the most high-profile points of leverage that the Pakistanis have with the U.S. is the shipment of a large percentage of non-lethal supplies through the country to NATO troops in Afghanistan. Pakistan temporarily closed the border to NATO supplies last year after an accidental U.S. helicopter strike killed 2 Pakistani troops. It is unclear that the suspension of aid could provoke a similar response. When you take this kind of action, you reinforce the transactional nature of the relationship, said Lodi. The moment you do that, all bets are off because the response will not be a very positive one. Yes, this too is another sign of the times and another physical manifestation of the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 17, verse 15. And he said unto me, the waters which thou saw, where the whore stands, are peoples and multitudes and nationalities and languages. 16. And the 10 horns which thou saw upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. 17. For God has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom or nation unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. 18. And the woman which thou saw is that great city, which reigns over the kings and leaders of the earth. It's time for all prophecy to be fulfilled, and this is how it gets done. It's called destiny or fate. Everything is connected, and everything is numbered. The 4th angel is sounding. Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 11. For they have healed the hurt of the daughter of my people slightly, saying, Peace, peace, when there is no peace. 12. Were they ashamed when they had committed abomination? No, they were not at all ashamed, neither could they blush. Therefore shall they fall among them that fall. In the time of their visitation they shall be cast down, saith the Lord. 13. I will surely consume them, saith the Lord. There shall be no grapes on the vine, nor figs on the fig tree, and the leaf shall fade, and the things that I have given them shall pass away from them. And this is the vision that I have seen.